All right. Hello, everyone. I am officially kicking off today's Taproot webinar, Fuel Your Fundraising with Volunteer Support. We're so happy to have you all here with us today. I'm seeing so many amazing nonprofit missions on the line. Please continue to use that chat box to tell us about your organization. Tell us about you and this passion that you're bringing for your mission. Feel free to drop your LinkedIn's, your website information. I know it sounds like a lot of people are open to networking, and we love for these conversations to keep happening offline. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have so much great stuff to get into today. And we're here to really focus in on how can we leverage support from the corporate space to assist with this ever-present nonprofit challenge of fundraising, whether that's bringing in funds and support from individual donors through individual giving campaigns like year-end campaigns or Giving Tuesday, or whether that question mark is, how do we bring in institutional support? How do we create better, stronger grant proposals? How do we create corporate sponsorships? How do we secure these types of community partners to make sure we're shoring up our different revenue streams as a nonprofit so that we can continue to meet our bottom line, which is serving our community? So throughout today's event, we're going to talk about all of the above. We're going to dig into some of the core infrastructure building blocks that make fundraising possible. So the messaging you need to have in place, the branding, the communications, the project management structure, the tech structure, all of the pieces that are really going to support your ability to fundraise this year and years to come. So this is a webinar format. Please continue using that chat box to ask me questions. We also have Taproot staff members on the line who will be answering questions, monitoring that chat throughout. If it's something that the group could benefit from, if it's a nice, big, broad, meaty question for us, they will send me that question to answer at the end of the event because we have time for Q&A blocked out. So keep that in mind. Hang out to the end because we'll have a good discussion period. And this event is being recorded. So if you need to jump early, don't worry, we're putting this on YouTube. You'll be able to fast forward right to the point that you had to jump from and catch up on all of the content and discussion that you may miss. So we'll share that recording after the event. You will also receive a PDF of the deck. All right, so now that logistics are out of the way, I'm going to get us going. I'll start with a quick introduction following the example of the wonderful folks who are introducing themselves in the chat. My name is Kimberly Swartz, pronouns she, her, and based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So shout out to any other North Carolinians in the chat. I am Taproot Senior Director of Community Engagement, which really just means that I have this great job of getting to design experiences that bring nonprofits together with volunteers. And so really, really a pleasure to meet with all of you today. And hopefully this event will lead to many more Taproot experiences for your nonprofits for months and years to come. So please keep using that chat box to introduce yourself. Keep in mind those logistics notes that I just ran through. I'm going to be keeping up with the chat as best as I can. But if we don't get to your question throughout the presentation, hang around for Q&A and I will cover all of the questions at that point. All right, so quick agenda look ahead. I will quickly jump into who Taproot is and an overview of our free services. We had a lot of folks indicate when they registered for this event that that's the information that they're most interested in. And so I'm going to start there, and then I'm going to use the rest of the time to dig into the fundraising aspect of our content. So I'm going to talk about some marketing channels, some promotional channels that you can leverage for your fundraising campaigns. I'm also going to talk about specific examples of how volunteer support can help you create infrastructure, develop strategies, or even execute fundraising campaign elements. through each one of those marketing channels. And so the goal is that you leave this event with oodles and oodles of recommendations for tactics to use during your next fundraising campaign. And more importantly, lots of ideas for volunteer support that you can request right now through Taproot's free programs. So hopefully you're able to take action, even make a request as we're chatting today. That would be great. Okay, so quickly diving into a Taproot introduction. If you aren't experienced with our nonprofit, we are a nonprofit organization that exists to support our fellow nonprofit organizations. I think that's the simplest way to put it. We were founded back in 2001 with this knowledge that there's a massive resource gap present in the social sector. I know I'm preaching to the choir by sharing that. Organizations who may have the solutions to our world's most pressing social challenges don't have the financial means or staff capacity to carry out those missions to their fullest extent. And so our goal is to democratize access to these resources for nonprofits, regardless of what their mission area is, regardless of what their budget size is, their staff size, or how many years they've been in operations. And we do that by mobilizing skilled volunteers, and so that you all can access these resources that your missions need to thrive. So a little bit more about our work. And again, I'm going to zoom through these opening slides because I want to make sure we have plenty of time to get into the good stuff. But this slide deck will be provided for all of you later today or tomorrow morning at the very latest. So as I mentioned, Taproot is here to get nonprofits the business support that you all need, and we do that for free. So all of Taproot's services, resources, webinars, and pro bono programs are all cost-free. So since the early 2000s, we've partnered with over 10,000 social change organizations and tens of thousands of volunteers, totaling over $300 million in donated professional services. And we forge hundreds of pro bono connections every week through Taproot Plus, which is our free-to-use volunteer and nonprofit matchmaking platform, which some of you may be familiar with. And in addition to this community-led programming through Taproot Plus, our nonprofit also partners with companies and grant makers through our advisory services practice, which brings talented corporate employee talent directly to our nonprofits across the Taproot network. And so through the Taproot Plus platform, we're really lowering the barriers to entry for organizations, especially those who are maybe just starting to grow or have just started, have just formed themselves. In fact, many of our most active program participants are startup organizations, folks who were founded under 5 years ago, or who may be completely volunteer-led. So I know that was a frequently asked question on the registration form was, we're a volunteer-led organization or we're a board-run organization. Am I still eligible for your services? And the answer is yes. So I want to address that head on and right away in our presentation. Startup and early stage nonprofits are eligible for all of the support mechanisms that I'll talk through today. And our staff is really knowledgeable about your unique needs because we are so accustomed to working with small to medium-sized organizations. Okay, so I know Kristen, thank you so much. She's put a link up at the top of your screen. This slide is where you'll find information about how to join the Taproot community if you're not part of it already. This is Taproot Plus, our online nonprofit volunteer matchmaking platform. It's really the front door to accessing services through our nonprofit. So if you click on that link at the banner at the top of your screen, you'll be taken to it. As I mentioned, it's free to have an account. It's free to request services. You can have as many staff members have accounts, as many board members have accounts, and leveraging Taproot's resources as you want. We don't place any cap or lid on that. And we have a virtual community of over 150,000 volunteers from the worlds of IT and technology, business strategy, HR and leadership development, marketing and communications, software development, design, operations, analytics, and more. And I'm sharing this program participation info with you right at the top, because if you hear about a volunteer project during the course of this webinar that your organization needs, I want you to immediately be able to sign up and request that support. So think of it as almost like a learning and working session for both of us together. So Taproot team members are in the chat right now. You and I will have Q&A time at the end of the event. And so this is a great time to ask any questions you have as you're trying to submit a request on the Taproot platform. And I won't be offended at all if you pull up taprootplus.org in another tab and start drafting a volunteer request while I'm chatting with you. So one of the reasons that I wanted to highlight the volunteer skill sets that are commonly found on Taproot Plus is because of one of the main focal points of this event, which is how are we translating, how are you able to tap into skill sets from the corporate spaces to tackle a nonprofit specific challenge, nonprofit fundraising? And so some of what I'm going to ask for you to keep in mind throughout today's event is thinking through how can you act as a little bit of a translator between what your nonprofit needs and the skills that you now know are available through Taproot or potentially through other volunteer intermediary sources. Because I think a lot of the tips and ideas you'll hear today are definitely able to be carried outside of Taproot's programs. And so keep in mind that you're trying to figure out how to act as a little bit of a translator between breaking down those silos between nonprofit fundraising and the corporate world. Because oftentimes when you go to a corporate volunteer and say, I need help with fundraising, you might scare them away. They might think, oh, well, I don't have skill set in that area. I don't have experience in that area. However, if you can make it feel more accessible, if you can make it feel more relatable to what they do have experience in, that's where you can start to harness the really, really valuable support and really, really valuable skills. So that's why today we're going to be talking about marketing. We're going to be talking about IT and CRM. We're going to be talking about your website and PR and all of the things that absolutely exist in spades in the corporate world, and your nonprofit can 100% leverage those skills and that experience in order to fuel your fundraising and bring in more funds to support your mission in the long term. So let's get into it. I want to start our conversation just by acknowledging, going through some of the key promotional channels that your nonprofit is likely using to help bring in not only building awareness for your organization's mission, but then hopefully turning that awareness into donations and support. And so I'll start by covering these 4 promotional channels, but I'm really curious if there are other promotional channels that you're also using in your individual giving efforts. I really want to make sure that I can pepper in some pro bono recommendations for those channels as well. So if you are leveraging something that's not on this list, social media, content, email, PR, definitely let me know in the chat box so I can talk to it. Yes, so we'll talk about search engine marketing under the content bucket. Thank you so much, Kathleen. So keep those coming. So let me start with social media, because this is likely going to be an especially important channel for you if you're focusing on individual giving this year. However, social media is also a key way to establish a high quality and impact first brand presence for current and future funders as well, institutional funders. They are absolutely going to check out your social feeds when considering any grant proposal or any sponsorship request that your organization makes of their company or of their foundation. And so think about social media really as a place for you to humanize your brand. Generally, social messaging is going to be more casual in tone and focus on storytelling. And I didn't mention this at the top, but I actually work as a marketing pro bono consultant for many organizations. And from my experience as a nonprofit social media strategist in former roles, my top tip here is to make sure that you have a well-balanced diet of social content in any lead up and throughout a given campaign that you're running. One of the top mistakes that I see nonprofits making is that they'll be silent on social media in the weeks leading up to a fundraising event or a fundraising campaign like Giving Tuesday, because they're pouring all of their staff capacity into creating content and posts just for that campaign. But that means someone on Facebook or someone on Instagram, LinkedIn isn't hearing or seeing from you for like 2 or 3 weeks. And then all of a sudden, every single post is asking them for money. And it gets really repetitive and they're forgetting, well, why do I follow? Why do I support this organization in the first place? And they are craving more of that storytelling. They want to see case studies. They want to see success stories. They want to see impact reporting on, what the effect your mission is having on the community. So really, really lean into that well-balanced diet approach. For every donation request that you publish, make sure that you're sharing out an impact stat. Make sure that you're sharing out a story of who your services are impacting. Make sure you have some sort of profile out on your staff or board members, the people who make your mission possible. And because I don't want to donate to your social fundraiser unless you've consistently been on my feet educating me on the issue in our community that you're solving and the solutions that your organization is employing. And then moving on to content marketing, I totally recognize this is a really broad bucket, and it really refers to the development and distribution of your organization's story and viewpoint, especially in the online space. So when we think about content as a promotional channel for fundraising, we're thinking about how your website and the content on the site is using keywords to maximize search engine optimization. And we're thinking about the stories and the research and the resources or events that your organization is creating and sharing with your community through your email or your social or your webinars, etc. So your content strategy really helps fuel all of the rest of your marketing strategies, making sure that you always have fresh and relevant materials to share with your newsletter list, social audiences, potential funders, etc. So I really think content marketing is like the lifeblood of all of the other great marketing efforts and promotional fundraising efforts that you're doing. And that's how it ties into things like, folks in the chat are calling out SEM, SEO, Google Ads, Google Grants. Absolutely, all of that should be tied into your content marketing strategy. Next up, email marketing. I did, this is probably about a year ago at this point, we did a pretty extensive volunteerism research effort here at Taproot. And one of the most conclusive takeaways is that email is the way people want to be notified about opportunities to support nonprofits. So 91% of our respondents included email or said email is their top option. But when you think about how to leverage email for your fundraising campaigns, I would recommend not just thinking of it as a collection of one-off email blasts, but instead of thinking about it as a communications journey or experience for your stakeholders. Answering the questions, what are they learning in each email? What is the one action you want them to take in each campaign? How does one email build off of another? So what did they learn last time that now they're carrying in that knowledge into this email? So we can spend less time, less space talking about that and instead get to the meat of another problem or get to the meat of another ask instead. How are you segmenting your email list to ensure that the right communications are going to the right people at the right time in their user journey with your organization? So taking a step back and really considering how can email marketing become part of the user experience for people as they're interacting with our brand, as they're interacting with our nonprofit. Dr. Davis, that's a really good question. Let me come back to that a little later because I'm sure other people that's on their mind too. And sometimes it varies organization by organization. And then finally, Public relations. So how are you getting the word out to a community that isn't yet in your direct marketing funnel? Because obviously if you have someone's email, they're following you on social media, if they're visiting your website, they're coming into your direct marketing funnel. Versus PR, you're really trying to extend your brand presence outside of that. And I would include media relations in this bucket as well, since such a big piece of being able to successfully execute PR for an event or a fundraising campaign does definitely involve having a groundwork of research on relevant media contacts or publications, and a knowledge of what hook would work best for those audiences. And I definitely think PR involves a lot of relationship development because of this. So now that we've covered some of the core channels, I want to talk about the infrastructure that then supports your work executing fundraising related tasks or projects that use each of those promotional channels. Because frequently when Taproot is chatting with nonprofits, we consult with hundreds of nonprofits each month, and oftentimes our conversations, nonprofits immediately jump to executing marketing tasks within those channels I just talked about. So, okay, so I can have a volunteer come in and do XYZ social media posts for me. Great. And that is great. And we love to connect nonprofits with volunteers for that. It's PR, social, email, content. Those tasks are absolutely good fits for Taproot volunteer support. But what we like to do is push our nonprofit partners to go one step further and really get to the root of their fundraising challenges. Because we find by focusing on some of the infrastructure pieces, nonprofits can set themselves up for longer term revenue generation success and organization resiliency versus some of these shorter term wins, shorter term, maybe superficial wins. And so with that investment in mind, I want to hit on 4 key infrastructure areas, which you can see on the screen: data, brand and messaging, website, and business development strategy. And I'm going to go through pro bono projects in all 4 of these categories that you can complete with volunteers to assist in this infrastructure building or strengthening that I was talking about. And then you will also get slides and slides full of ideas for tasks, social media tasks, content marketing tasks, PR tasks, etc. You will get slides and slides of ideas and inspiration for additional pro bono that you can use on an ongoing fundraising campaign or a future campaign. So I'm going to give you both. We're going to talk a lot about the infrastructure stuff, and then you will also leave with lots of ideas for the short-term quick wins. Okay, so we're not going to have time to talk about every single idea you're going to see on the slides, and that's why it's so important. We're sharing the PDF after the fact. So we're giving you everything, even though we'll only be able to discuss maybe like half of it. All right, so let's start with data as our first fundraising infrastructure piece, because I think this is such an important one and can unfortunately be a little overlooked with some of the nonprofits that I consult with. Because above all, at the end of the day, any supporter of your organization wants to know that they are making a difference alongside a great cause. Bar none. So if it's a volunteer, if it's someone who's donating, if it's an institution that's donating, they want to be affiliated. They want to know that they're making a difference. And so they need you to tell them how they're making a difference by partnering with you. So you need to be able to clearly make a case for support and have a tight narrative about what their contribution will enable your organization to accomplish. You will not be able to have a case for support or that tight narrative without data, both qualitative and quantitative. This is really crucial for establishing your establishing your fundraising and then therefore your marketing efforts, whether you're focused on individual giving, business sponsorship, or institutional giving from foundations. So some of the foundational projects that I want to call out here, things like working with a volunteer from the corporate space to dig into how do you evaluate your programs? how do you evaluate the success or lack of success of a service or an event or a program that you're running? So having someone who's really skilled in evaluation, who's skilled in survey techniques, who's skilled in data analysis, come in, actually do a bit of an audit of your current program evaluation techniques and tactics, and give you a third-party assessment, third-party unbiased assessment on, okay, you have some pieces that are missing. If I was a funder or a potential sponsor, I would be asking about XYZ data points. And right now you don't have any way of gathering that information through your surveys or through the focus groups that you're doing. Or they might come in and say, hey, I think that the survey for this particular service that you're running is inconsistent with these other surveys that you're running, and therefore you can't pool data together in a really cohesive or collective way. And so that's making it really inefficient for you to tell your data story. Regardless of what they identify, bringing in that third-party perspective can really help shore up how you're doing evaluation, and then really set you up well to be able to tell a better story, a better narrative with your data going forward. So I really can't recommend this top project enough, program evaluation, assessment, and recommendations, because I think it applies to individual giving fundraising just as much as it applies to the grant writing and proposals that you're submitting. You need this to fuel any kind of fundraising or revenue generation efforts at your organization. And then you have a few other examples here as well. Data analysis and visualization, such a great way to make use of corporate skill sets. And that can be a really tough thing for us to prioritize and make space for as nonprofit leaders. Sometimes I wish I could sit all day and immerse myself in data and just do like fun visualizations, see if I can compare this with this, see if I could make a really fun visualization out of my latest survey results. And I just don't have time for it. And so this is a great way to bring a volunteer in, save that space out of your calendar so that you can lean into an activity that only you are experienced at or only you are qualified at. So increasing your own capacity while bringing in someone who's an expert in analysis and visualization. Same with projects listed like stakeholder research, survey overhaul, great ways to better understand your community so that you can shore up your programming or shore up the messaging and storytelling around your program. I see these as bedrock items for your organization to leverage during a holiday giving campaign, but also throughout 2024 and 2025. All right, so that's my pitch for fundraising infrastructure projects. However, I also have a slide here with lots of ideas on how to leverage data in your next fundraising campaign. So as I mentioned, we're not going to have time to dig into all of these because we really stocked the slide full of ideas, but maybe I'll pick out one or two. These are all examples of projects that you can link up with Taproot volunteers for. So let's talk about the first one on the list, creating a graphics package for annual impact data. So if you do have a really extensive, robust program evaluation strategy already set up, you feel really good about the survey results you have coming in or the consistent focus efforts that you're doing, maybe the next step is just using that data to effectively share the narrative that you want community members to be aware of about how strong and powerful your mission is. And so a graphics package is a really tightly scoped project that a volunteer would be able to create in just a few weeks, that you would be able to use and distribute through your social media channels, really showcasing your annual impact stats from the previous year, or maybe just the previous month, if you want it to be even more time-bound. It's something you could use definitely on Instagram. I think people on LinkedIn, this type of content really resonates with them as well. Seeing a few questions. Yes, this is a webinar. It's being recorded. So please definitely disseminate with whoever on your team. It would be helpful to hear this. And we are sharing these slides as a PowerPoint, or excuse me, as a PDF after the presentation. All right, so I'll maybe cover one more idea on this slide. Let's talk about email, a nurture series for donor segments. I'm a big email proponent. You will learn this as we go through the presentation. Email communications, it's such a powerful tool for us nonprofits to have in our belt, but we have to be really targeted with the communications that we're sending. And so you heard me talk about it before, but email segmentation is really, really important. So if you have a list of people who have donated to your nonprofit in the past, consider for your next campaign how you are going to segment that group of people to re-engage them for your next fundraising campaign. You could consider segmenting them by geographic region, segmenting them by their last engagement date with your organization, by the size of their donation. There are many different factors that you could use, but you need to dig into that data a bit and figure out, based on the goals of our campaign, based on the audience behavior stats that we have access to, what makes most sense in grouping these people together. And then you can craft really tailored communications to the specific groups that you're trying to appeal to. So if you're going after, if you're segmenting geographically, I would recommend really tailoring your email communications to how your organization is impacting the geographic community or neighborhood that those donors are based out of, right? Because you know that that content will resonate more deeply with them and potentially move them to a donation, right? Or if you're segmenting by donor, by donation size, that's another way, right? You can use communications to appeal to them for smaller or larger gifts. But without segmenting, without studying that data and making the investment and using that data, it's going to be really difficult to tailor messaging for those people and where they're at in their user journey with your organization. Okay, next infrastructure piece, I want to talk about your branded messaging. This is really important for individual giving, especially if you're using all of those promotional channels we talked about before, social media, email, PR, content marketing, because a cohesive organizational brand, just like you purchase products or services from brands that you trust, people give to nonprofit brands that they trust will use that money, time, talent, etc., in the most impactful way. And brand consistency leads to trust, right? If someone sees a version of your brand on Instagram and then they go onto your website and it looks drastically different, the colors, the messaging, the way the tone or voice that you use to communicate, if there's disconnect between what they saw on social media and then what they're seeing on your website, that's immediately going to cause brand confusion, which causes a breakdown in trust with your brand, because they're going to be wondering, oh, did I click the wrong link? Did this take me to the wrong site? This doesn't feel recognizable to me. And so you really need to think about consistency when you're thinking about how your brand is showing up in these different places. So if you're an early stage organization, work in the brand and messaging bucket will definitely involve building your brand. So deciding what makes you, you, what values do you hold near and dear? How is your organization best positioned to solve XYZ societal issue? And then what voice and tone does your brand use when communicating with different stakeholders? And as I just mentioned, that voice and tone piece can be really key. And then if you're a more established organization, so maybe you've already been around for over a decade or decades, or your work is already well known, work in this brand and messaging bucket could be an assessment of where is our brand positioned versus where do we want our brand to be positioned? How can we use this moment in time to reflect and evaluate our brand and brand values? Is our brand presented consistently to stakeholders? Because as we mentioned, consistency breeds trust. So a few projects in this infrastructure bucket that I want to highlight. I think if you haven't developed your mission statement or your vision statement yet, or maybe it's been several years since you last considered how those statements came together and if they still accurately portray the work and the impact your organization is having, I think that's a really powerful project to work on with a volunteer. I will also add every single project example on this list: key message development, mission and vision statement, communications plan, etc. These are all actually pre-scoped project templates that we have loaded into Taproot Plus for you. So we're trying to make it even easier. We want you to use these infrastructure like building blocks. We know nonprofits need this support. We've scoped out, we've done the work for you. All you need to do is go into your Taproot Plus account, use our common like templates drop-down menu when you're on the project request form, and you can load any of these projects, any of the 5 that you see on the screen. Another one that I'll mention here, because I think it's really key, is when's the last time that your organization conducted a SWOT analysis? So looking at your internal strengths and weaknesses, so things you do really well as an organization, the things that maybe you're not doing so well as an organization, as well as external opportunities and threats. This is really key for us. So we're still being impacted by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. We're still being impacted by inflation as nonprofit organizations. Those factors are definitely impacting our volunteer numbers and how far donations can go. And so those would be examples of environmental threats that would need to be included in this analysis. It's really important to, I would say, conduct an analysis every time you're going through any kind of strategizing as an organization, whether it's strategic planning, whether it's updating what your business plan is, how you're connecting your mission back to your revenue generation efforts, anytime you're doing marketing strategy updates or marketing planning for the year. So if you haven't updated your SWOT analysis in a while, I would really recommend that infrastructure piece, because that's going to set you up to better address environmental factors when you're filling out a grant proposal. It's going to allow you to better talk about yourself and position your brand in relation to other organizations or other potential solutions that might also exist in your community. You'll have differentiating factors ready to go at the top of your mind if you get a question from someone during a webinar or get a question from someone on social media the next time you're running a fundraising campaign. So definitely recommend, I recommend all of the projects on this page, but SWOT analysis can be really valuable. All right, so now taking it back, how can you use brand and messaging work? How can we use those infrastructure pieces that we're shoring up with volunteer support? How can this funnel into your next fundraising campaign? So like I said, lots of ideas on this slide. Maybe I'll pick one to call out here. I'll do one in the public relations bucket because I love this one. A really great project that you can tackle with a pro bono volunteer would be something like creating a press release template. It sounds so basic, but at the end of the day, who of us has time when we are embroiled in nonprofit work? Who of us has time to create a new press release every single time we have a big moment or some sort of milestone impact or maybe a leadership transition? These are all things that someone who is extremely talented in PR can help create some stock templates for, so that you can have them loaded in a folder in your in whatever your organization uses as infrastructure, Google Workspace, Outlook, whatever that case may be. Just have them saved in a folder, ready to go, ready for you to customize with the specifics of whatever the PR moment or milestone is, so that you can send it out. Same with this media kit for a holiday fundraiser. That's something you could have a volunteer build one time for one fundraiser, and then you have this tool to recycle and tweak and reformat for any fundraiser to come. So definitely some good ideas on the list. I love these PR ones. All right, our next infrastructure bucket, website. So I know a few of you called out Google Ads, SEM, SEO as being important items for you. This all ties back into SEO. Obviously, you need to have a great website. This might be the most explanatory infrastructure area that we'll cover. Investing in a clean, well-designed, and well-written website will pay off in dividends for your nonprofit's fundraising efforts, whether that's institutional giving from grant makers or individual giving from community members. So everything we just talked about with your brand absolutely applies to your website. Your web presence directly impacts the perceptions of potential donors and funders. And this heavily impacts your content marketing abilities as well. So a few partnership possibilities, and many of these are pre-scope project templates as well in Taproot. I know for a fact that the user experience audit is something we have built in. So is website design, and so is website feature development. So we've tried to make these things easy for you. The one piece that I do, or the pitfall that I see nonprofits often falling into when requesting pro bono support for their website, is trying to wrap everything together. Remember, we're trying to translate our nonprofit needs into a request, into a pro bono request or pro bono project description that will resonate with corporate professionals as something that is feasible for them to work on. I'm going to tell you right now, if you put out a pro bono request for someone to look at your current site, tell you how to improve it, redesign their site or redesign your site with those improvements in mind, create new content for the site, including optimizing for search engine marketing and Google Ads, and train your staff on how to use the website. I mean, it would take a magical, beautiful unicorn of a volunteer to jump in and be able to handle that entire project for you, because it's not a project, it's a position at that point, right? And so all of those things that I just named, auditing your website, that's a pro bono project right there. If you need website content that's audited and optimized for SEO, that's another project. If you need your website redesigned, so new design mock-ups and wireframes created, that's a project in and of itself. If you need website designs implemented, that is a website development project. That's an entirely different skill set than website design. If you need your staff trained on how to use a website or how to do quick updates to your site, again, another project. So keep in mind tight scoping when you're thinking about how to use volunteers for website needs. Quick projects, or I'll stay on this page really quickly, but again, we'll share this PDF after the fact. A lot of ideas here for my folks who are interested in SEM and SEO. These are all ideas for how you can apply some of that website infrastructure work that we just talked about to your content marketing efforts. And then our last bucket, business development strategy. I cannot advocate for you all investing some time and energy in working with our volunteers in this area. We just have so many talented folks from the corporate world, from our corporate partners that are under-tapped and underutilized here. Many nonprofits can shy away from thinking about their organization in for-profit terms, like some of the terms that you'll see on this slide, like revenue or cost and profit centers, which I do understand. It's rooted in capitalism. That's something many of us are trying to find solutions for the harms that system causes. So I do understand the aversion, but there's value in considering revenue generation from this traditionally corporate lens, because it's certainly an area that volunteers from these spaces will be able to really flex their strategy and finance muscles on your behalf. So definitely recommend the business planning item that you see on this slide. I mentioned it earlier, and so I wanted to come back to it. A business plan details a company's objectives, or in your case, a nonprofit's objectives, and how it plans to achieve those goals. So a business plan will lay out a written roadmap from marketing, your financials, and operational standpoints. And it'll lay out your impact goals, and then logistically, how you can afford to make those goals come to life through your revenue generation streams. So it's a really crucial infrastructure piece to consider before diving into, all right, we're just running a Giving Tuesday campaign this year, or we're definitely doing year-end giving. Because if you're a board chair that wants to try individual giving, but your executive director doesn't agree that it should be a priority because the time it would take to run a Giving Tuesday campaign means that your time would be taken away from other revenue generation tactics that are baked into your business plan, that's a red flag. You're on two different pages about how you bring your mission to life. And so align internally on your goals and the revenue generation tactics that you will employ to meet those goals. And working on a business plan with a volunteer from the corporate world can be a great first step to making that happen. And then lots of other good ideas here. I'm trying to make sure we have time for some Q&A. So we'll share this as a PDF, and I hope this gives you lots of ideas for things you can go and request volunteer support for right now. Lots of great ways to use business development strategy in your next fundraising campaign right here, and potentially your next holiday giving campaign or your Giving Tuesday campaign if that's what you're choosing. Okay, I added in a bonus slide here at the end because I know a lot of you are going to ask about grant writing support for your nonprofit and if Taproot has that available. So I want to make sure I just answer that question head on. So a few recommendations that I've listed here. One of the most frequent pro bono requests that Taproot staff have to provide additional user support for is anything that comes in from nonprofits having to do with grant writing. So keep in mind that Taproot volunteers are primarily from the corporate world in all of those industries I listed before. We do have some volunteers who are from the nonprofit space, right? I'm one of them. I have worked in nonprofits for most of my career, and now I also volunteer my skills to other nonprofits. And there are other people in our platform, in our community, who are also similar to that. However, the bulk of the volunteers come from a corporate background. And so anything you request for grant writing support, you are tapping into a much smaller piece of the pie when it comes to the total volunteers who have the skills to apply to that project. So anything related to grant writing is going to be an extremely competitive request to get matched with a pro bono provider. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. Other tips that I'll mention here is often nonprofits who request grant writing support make the mistake of describing a position, not a pro bono project or task. Usually, we find that nonprofits are looking for a grants manager who can research opportunities, draft a proposal, submit a proposal, and then manage the grant reporting responsibilities. That's not a project that can be accomplished within 2 to 10 weeks with a volunteer donating like 3 to 5 hours of their time each week. That's not a scoped project. That's an entire position that people get paid a lot of money for in the nonprofit space, deservedly so. And so I really highly recommend that you, similar to what we were talking about on the website piece of things, consider each of those steps of submitting a grant proposal or managing a grant its own discrete pro bono project. So I've included a few examples here. If your staff doesn't have experience managing a grant or abiding by the reporting responsibilities that come with having received a grant, work with a project manager to establish a grants management workflow. That's a great way to tap into corporate support. If you have never submitted a grant, or maybe have never successfully received a grant, maybe working with a grant writer to review your grant proposal, review the template that you're using, and make recommendations and improvements to that template. That can be a really smart, efficient way to find a grant maker pro bono to assist with that. Conduct research on prospective funders, or updating your key messages that you use when applying for grants. This is definitely something I highly recommend to any of my nonprofit clients. If you do not have a key messages document established with like different versions of your elevator pitch for the different like key stakeholders that you work with or interact with regularly, this is a huge infrastructure piece that I would highly recommend you focus on in the coming months. Okay, so I just threw so many ideas and tips and advice, sometimes unwarranted advice at you. So I know you're soaking up and digesting a lot, but I am curious, after seeing the different promotional channels laid out, after seeing our different infrastructure categories, what volunteer partnership do you now feel you're most likely to dive into over the next 3 months or so? Website audit and revisions. I love that, Matt. It's so powerful. And your website content, it fuels just everything else that you do. And working with an experienced UX designer is such a great way to invest in yourself and your long-term success. I'm seeing a few sponsorship strategies. Again, such a good idea. Really great way to make smart use of resources from the corporate space as well. Video storytelling, I love that. I know that's something Taproot definitely needs more of too. Data collection and utilization. Thank you, Jerry. That music to my ears. That's one of my favorite uses of pro bono, and such a smart way to shore up all of the great narratives that you're sharing about your organization and stories that you're telling. All right. So as you all keep sharing your thoughts, I'm just going to scroll through for questions. And I know we're a few minutes away from the bottom of the hour, but I did just want to note that I can hang out for extra time. So keep that in mind. All right. So I believe I got a question earlier around typically how often should you email your lists? I'm going to give a little bit of a crappy answer to this because it does vary based on your audience. And similar to what I was talking about with your social media audience and how your content really needs to be a well-balanced diet, I think the same can be said for email as well. I can give you an example of like an email nurture series that I've used at a few organizations. Typically, I will send out an email if someone has attended an event, or maybe they have donated to a campaign and we're trying to keep them in our funnel, potentially for another donation. Obviously, they get something immediate. Thank you for attending, for joining our community, whatever the case may be. So that would be like day of or day after the initial engagement. Then they would get email 2 about a week later, because we're trying to stay top of mind. We're trying to stay really present and inform them about other opportunities to engage with our organization. So day after, week after, then I would slow things down. So typically I would do maybe a 2-week gap between the second and the third email. And I usually cap email nurture series at 3 or 4 emails total, because I don't want to overwhelm people with the requests that we're making of them or the stories that we're trying to inspire them with. Because at a certain point, they're going to forget, well, what did I even do with this organization in the first place? Why are they still contacting me? And you don't want to get to the point where you're feeling like a nuisance or a nag. So hopefully that example is helpful, Dr. Davis, but it really does depend on your audience. I recommend digging into whatever email marketing data you have available to you when it comes to open rates, click rates, which segments of maybe your newsletter lists are like most receptive to different types of appeals. All of that data can be really, really beneficial in helping you to inform like what your timing is for different types of campaigns. Okay. I see another question here around, do we still provide PR pro bono? Yes. So we provide public relations, media relations. I would say that's actually a fairly under-tapped segment of the Taproot volunteer community. Typically, so marketing requests are really popular. It's also the area, we have a huge community of volunteers in the general marketing bucket. However, usually things like social media or email or blog writing, graphic design are always more popular requests than PR. So highly encourage you, if you have any PR ideas, I think that pool of volunteers is a little underutilized at the moment. Yes, Rashida, thank you for that question. Taproot is completely free of charge. And I will say, because I've said the word free a lot, there's no cost associated with joining Taproot, requesting services, linking up with our volunteers. You will never receive a bill from us. All of our resources and events are also free. However, there is a time and energy cost when it comes to using pro bono. And I don't want to like pull wool over anyone's eyes about that. These volunteers are really becoming team members for a certain number of weeks with your organization. And so you need to be prepared to onboard a new team member. You need to be prepared to provide them with feedback and tools and all of the materials and resources that that volunteer will need in order to be an effective team member for your nonprofit for the next month, 2 months, 3 months. So make sure you have the time and energy bandwidth that is required to manage a pro bono consultant effectively. That's what I would say the true cost of Taproot pro bono is that project management piece. All right, I'm checking. Kristen's sending me some other questions. Is it fair to say you would begin with a business plan before a fundraising plan? Yes. I think your business plan effectively dictates what your fundraising goals should be, because your business plan is how you're figuring out logistically how your mission is brought to life through which revenue streams. Do we need to charge a fee for certain services? Do we have a corporate sponsorships plan that we want to execute this next year? And we predict that will bring in X percentage of the annual budget we need to make this mission happen. So your business plan is going to lay out what your revenue generation streams will be and what roughly the percentage breakdown should look like. And then that's where fundraising goals and targets can stem from. So really great question. I see someone asking if Taproot has one-on-ones available. Yes. So we have a nonprofit success coach available as a resource for any of our nonprofit members. You do have to have a Taproot Plus account, but that's free to create. So just create that and then you can get hooked up with our nonprofit success coach. And they're available to do a little bit of a deeper dive on what your organization's core challenges are and how we would recommend prioritizing them. Versus like what's a good fit for pro bono and what's not a good fit for pro bono. Because I don't want to make it seem like every single thing on your to-do list is a good fit for Taproot pro bono or any pro bono, right? If we have like 4 core tests, and I can share one of those tests while still being cognizant of time. For example, one of our tests is knowledge transfer. Do you have the ability to share the materials or historical context that a volunteer would need in order to successfully carry out a project? If the answer is no, then it's not going to be a good fit for pro bono. So a good example of that is if you're looking for a volunteer to create new website designs for your nonprofit, but you have not conducted any stakeholder interviews with your community members or your staff members or your board members on what they need from a website, what's currently lacking with your current site, then that's a key piece of knowledge transfer you're not ready for. So in that case, we would say, sounds like you're not ready for a website design. Sounds like you do need a pro bono stakeholder research project first. Eileen, great question. I know I'm running close on time, so what I'm gonna do is, Kristen, can we include a link to our Taproot Plus intro webinar, because Josh does a really great job of breaking down those 4 core tests for great pro bono in that webinar recording. So can we include that recording in our follow-up notes? And that way, Eileen, again, it's just a YouTube video, so you'll be able to fast forward right to the part where Josh is talking about the 4 tests. And I believe it's right in the first half of the presentation. All right, I see another question here. It's from an organization that's been around for a while, but there was never a marketing or external relations department, is what it's looking like. And so there was never any effort to like build or promote the brand. Don't worry, you're not alone. You know, the reality is we're all nonprofit professionals or leaders here, and we all know that marketing is considered, it's a back office expense. And so it can be really difficult to prioritize those types of infrastructure pieces at the end of the day when we're just trying to carry out our missions and work with community members and create impact. And so if you're at a place where your organization has been around for a while, but you feel like you're lacking some of those brand and messaging key pieces, I would say it's probably really important for you to get a neutral third party in the door to help you do a bit of a brand audit and make some recommendations on, here are the projects I would recommend you start with first, or here's what I recommend you stop doing immediately. Here's what I recommend that you start to wean yourself off of. And here's what I recommend you keep doing. Because it can be really difficult when you're entrenched at an organization or you're working with people who have been at an organization for many years to be able to do that exploratory work without the baggage that comes with being with an organization for as long as you might have. So highly recommend some sort of audit, brand audit and recommendations, if that's the point where your organization is at. All right. I think I may have gotten to some of the I actually see one more from Tracy around how does Taproot generate revenue? Totally fair question. We're a nonprofit ourselves. So many of the things we've talked about today, you know, we have to practice what we preach. We get donations from individuals. We also receive support from some institutional funders as well. But one of the main ways that we are able to support our mission is, I mentioned at the very top of the presentation that we offer consultancy services to companies and grant makers who are looking to build out their skills-based volunteering programs, or they're looking to build out their employee volunteerism programs. So our group, we have a really, really amazing team of experienced consultants who go into companies, help them identify what their social impact goals are, what their employee engagement goals are, and help them design and deliver customized pro bono programming. And that's something that once you're signed up as a nonprofit on Taproot Plus, If there is an opportunity to work with one of Taproot's corporate or foundation partners through one of these custom pro bono programs that I just mentioned, you'll find out about those opportunities through the email that you use to sign up for Taproot Plus. So going back to the beginning when I mentioned Taproot Plus, it's kind of the front door for everything that we do. That's one of the reasons. You can always request on-demand pro bono support through Taproot Plus, but you also then become eligible for some of these other partnership events and activities, which Taproot executes these partnerships, and that's how we're able to sustain support for all of the rest of our mission. How do you become a volunteer consultant? Well, thank you so much for considering donating your time and talents to fellow nonprofits. I can share myself. I'm a nonprofit professional, and I also work with other nonprofits, and my pro bono consulting work with nonprofits is just like so rewarding and gratifying. It's also a great skill building opportunity if some other folks on the line are a little earlier in their careers. So definitely something to consider. If you have a Taproot nonprofit account, use a different email to create your Taproot volunteer account. Because you can only have one email affiliated with kind of either side of the experience. So that's the main tip that I would provide. But otherwise, Keenan, if you just go to taprootplus.org, which I think the banner is still up at the top of the screen, you can choose to sign up as a volunteer. We're going to ask you a few questions about your skill set, what you feel comfortable donating to the nonprofits, the types of mission areas that you're interested in, et cetera. So it'll look a little different from the nonprofit sign-up process, but I promise it does not take long. Okay, and I'm seeing, I think there was a specific like Taproot Plus tech question earlier. The email on this page, help@taprootplus.org, this is our help desk. So this really is the fastest way to get in touch with Taproot team members because many of us are all connected to this inbox. So I highly recommend using this address whenever you have a question about the platform. If there's a tech issue, I think someone said earlier that they got matched with someone who came across a little bit robotically in their message, which I'm sorry to hear that. Let's explore that. We'll talk about it one-on-one through the help desk. So if you need any kind of user support, customer service, that's what our team is for. I promise we are all humans. Human beings are the only people that will email you from Taproot. So please reach out to us. We're here to help. And you make our day when you ask us really good, interesting questions. Okay, I think I may have gotten to everything, but shout out if your question was not answered. Okay, and again, we'll email you recording some of the other resource links we talked about and the PDF of the deck later this afternoon, hopefully, fingers crossed, tomorrow morning at the latest. And so you'll have our contact information and we can always start a one-on-one conversation after that. All right. So Taproot Foundation and Taproot Plus are the same thing. You cannot create an account through taprootfoundation.org. You can only create accounts on taprootplus.org. So if you've created a taprootplus.org, then you're good to go, Eileen. Okay. All right, folks, it looks like that's all for us. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. As I mentioned before, I hope this conversation can be the first of many. And please start getting those requests in on Taproot Plus. Me and the team will be taking a look at the new requests probably later this evening. And I'm excited to see some from the folks that joined us on the line today. Thanks, everyone. Bye now. Have a great rest of your week.